Putting V8s in Defenders have become more of a tradition than a necessity. And when I heard that Land Rover would put a V8 in their brand new Defender, I was unsure of everything. But here we are. A 5-liter supercharged V8 with 525 horsepower and 625 Newton meters of torque. And in the 90 model, meaning 3 doors instead of 5 as in the 110. Less practical, first year. Logically, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have any redeeming qualities. But is the Defender V8 about something more? Totally blacked out, this Defender sneaks up on its targets. Just look at these front lights. They look like they are up to no good. But if you look at the whole, there aren't that many details that show that this is a V8. But there are some. Namely, the blue brake calipers and the V8 badge. But if you go to the rear, there's one more thing. And that is, of course, the bigger exhaust. 4 exhaust tip that's hanging underneath. So there aren't that many details to show that this is a V8. Some people might love it because it flies under the radar. Others might not like it because it doesn't differentiate itself enough from a regular Defender. This car weighs 2.5 tons, so everything is heavy, and that includes the doors. Or this massive door. And here the rear luggage space shows itself. Well, it isn't that much to actually show itself because it is a 90, meaning that you have about as much luggage space as a Suzuki Jimny. And I'm not exaggerating. This is really, really poor. There is one other major drawback with the 90 that I will show. This door is extremely large, so when you park you really need to be careful so you don't open this up on a car next to you. But that's not a big problem per se. The problem is if you're more than 2 people, because you need to go into the rear seats. Yes, this car has rear seats. And to do this, you have a latch and you have a button that makes the seat go forward and a seat that makes it go backward. You have to hold this, mind you. It isn't automated. So this is as forward as it can be. And then I have to put my body through this little gap, which I can. Not that dignifying. And then of course someone in the front needs to push this seat back to its original position, because I don't reach. And this little button gets in the way here when it's fully reclined. So you will nick your finger. Actually, I thought it would be more uncomfortable sit in the rear than it actually is. It is quite comfortable. But since you have these details on the side, they take up a lot of light, or they cover a lot of the light that comes from the outside. And they even create a huge blind spot when you drive. The interior of the Defender is truly unique, with bolts that are shown so you can easily change the interior of the Defender if anything gets nicked or damaged. You have really nice grab handles, and everything else is clad in nice fabric. I have a great infotainment system with a clear screen and a nice design. It's one of the better on the market, definitely. There are also a heavy dose of buttons, which means that you can control the temperature really easily, the fan speed, the height of the vehicle. All of the off-road settings are also here. But if you want to change the drive mode, especially when you're driving on the highway or want to do some change quickly to off-road, you need to put your head down, push it, and then select it on the screen. And doing that when you're driving on 70, 100 kilometers an hour, yeah, it's a bit too much focus here and not enough focus on the road. One cool feature is the fridge, which keeps your beverage cool. There are two different settings for how cool you want your drinks, and it's actually quite large. And the next thing is to see how the new Defender V8 handles on the road. You can hear that V8 mumble or rumble to life. And I was a bit surprised actually. I mean, 500 plus horsepower V8 supercharged. It sounds muted. And compared to the Sport SVR, it is not even half the sound. Especially at higher revs. It loses its volume, or it doesn't have enough volume. It doesn't build as the revs build. The torquiness from the engine and this 8-speed non-double clutch gearbox, it's actually an 8-speed torque converter gearbox. So this feels like an old school muscle car, but from Britain. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It creates a really laid back driving experience, especially when you're in normal. The fuel consumption is obviously horrendous. I've never been able to go underneath 1 liter per 10 kilometer. And if you drive in the city or in some stop and go traffic, you'll probably be above 1.6, 1.8. The Defender's interior is really unique, as I said before, but being a V8, the only difference is this Alcantara steering wheel and the pedals behind the steering wheel. Well, they're a nice touch, but I would want some badging or some different lights or something that makes it feel like I've spent over 100,000 euros on a Defender. Driving the Land Rover Defender V8 is everything that you would expect from a 2.5 ton V8 air suspension monster, especially on the highway and long flowing roads. This is in its element. Since it has such a short wheelbase, the turning radius is phenomenal. This car is a press car and has driven 14,940 kilometers as of now. But when you engage the blinkers to the right, it feels very different compared to when you engage it to the left. I talked about where this car really shines, which is on the highway, on long flowing roads. But if you get on a bit more broken roads with potholes, with patches on it, this car really crashes about. It feels like the suspension isn't completely calibrated for the weight of this car, for the extra weight that you get from that supercharged engine. This is an expensive product, a luxurious product that should handle, bad roads in general. It is an off-road car after all. Design not primarily, but it's a Defender, and that says everything about me being comfortable just tackling, I mean, almost everything. So a pothole shouldn't be a problem. You can see here that there are cameras around the car that gives you a 3D view around the entire car. So if you are off-road, or if you are trying to navigate a tight road or a parking garage, this is a phenomenal feature that really helps you navigate. It has an additional electronic rear differential for quicker driving, but since this is all-wheel drive, I never really feel that kicking in. I never get to push it, or the car isn't dynamic enough to make me feel that, yeah, this is now activated, now I can feel it working as magic. Of course, when you're driving on the snow or something like that, that's a different story. But really soon I'll take it on a few bends to see how it works there. But I need to talk about the competition before that, because of course you have the Mercedes G-Class, and that has decades of history and a fairly unchanged exterior. This has a fairly changed exterior, and everything underneath is also changed. It is a completely new car. It's evident that this car was made with a bit of love, heart and laughs. It's not a car that is going to fulfill numbers to be competitive, which means that it will attract a completely different buyer. I would love this to have the SEO treatment, to make a Defender SVR. You know, maybe give the new BMW derived 4.4 liter twin turbocharged V8 that they have in the new Range Rover. And I think it would be a really suiting engine for this. But then again, this V8 has been around for so long, and it's so connected deeply with JLA, Land Rover, Jaguar and so on. They have a lot of torque wherever you are in the rev range. So if I just push my throttle down, it moves. If you go into the sport mode, you go into dynamic and uses the pedals behind the steering wheel. I mean, it actually shifts fairly quickly, fairly quick and responsive on the initial turn-in, but then the weight of the car really just kicks in. You can feel the car starting to lean a bit, and the rest of the car trying to catch up, and you get a bunch of understeer. Yeah, when I go a bit quicker, this car doesn't feel as hunkered down as it needs to be. It gets pretty light, and the feedback from the steering wheel is, yeah, questionable. But on the highway, in the city, almost wherever, you feel like you're driving something special, something unique. The weight of it, the suspension, the exterior, the interior is unlike anything else. But 525 horsepower doesn't really tell the entire story. Can't help but smile though. Can't help but smile. Yeah, the brakes do work, but the braking pedal is really long and quite soft. I would like a firmer pedal that works earlier and be more easily judged. You know, every Defender has had a V8, and of course it's par for the course. But are we at a time and age where it just doesn't make sense? What are my final conclusions for this Land Rover Defender V8? Well, it is heavy, it drinks a lot of gas, it's expensive with a starting price of about 140,000 euros. And there are competitors that are both cheaper and faster. But in the day and age where cars are getting more similar, this is refreshingly different. And that is my final conclusion.